Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. How are we doing today? Yeah? All right, so I know that it's 2 o'clock today, and I know that not only am I a talk that is after lunch, I'm also a talk that is after another talk that was after lunch. So I'm going to try to, we're going to talk about some exciting things hopefully today, and I believe when we talk about exciting things, I think the room deserves a little bit more of energy. So if you could please just do one thing for me today, could I ask everyone to stand up just for a moment? Thank you so much. Stand up, shake out a little bit, kind of like get that energy. Take a stretch if you've been holding it in. Take a stretch a little bit. Wonderful. All right, now could you introduce yourself to whoever's sitting to the left of you? Just first name, last name. Can introduce yourself. And also to the right of you. Introduce yourself to whoever's sitting to the right of you as well. Thank you so much for doing that with me. That was absolutely wonderful. I can already feel a little bit more energy in the room. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Salman Suhail. I'm a senior product manager on the Slack platform team with a specific focus on productivity. And when we use the word productivity, what we're really talking about is where our goal is to attempt to drive more value between you, our developer of ecosystems and partners, and our users, who are our users as Slack, but who are also your users. And our goal is to try to drive more value through that chain. And today we're going to be talking about workflows. We're going to be talking about some new features that are coming out, and we're also going to be talking about we're going to be having some partner demos, and then we'll be taking some questions at the end. So as you're kind of listening to this talk, if any questions come up, please make a note of them. We have a more extended session for Q&A kind of at the end of this time. So I'm really excited to hear what anyone has to ask. So everyone at this conference particularly, but more than that, everyone in this room is really comfortable with the idea that here at Slack, we consider Slack to be the operating system for work. You've probably heard it a couple times already over the course of yesterday and today, whether from April or from Brad, about how the average enterprise software company is using over 1,000 software applications in their day-to-day, every single day. And you can think about it in your own lives. If you go back maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, if you're still working maybe 15 years, just think through your own day. Maybe you spent time on 2, 3, maybe 4 applications. Maybe you spent most of your day inside of email. But now I genuinely can't get through my day without touching and logging into at least 7 to 10 different applications. And I'm guessing most of the people in this room kind of fall into that same bucket. And as a part of the platform team at Slack, we think a lot about work. We think a lot about the nature of work. We've been talking a lot about the nature of work over the course of the last 24, 48 hours. And on the platform team, we think a lot about that too. But when we think about that work, we think about it with the perspective of all of you in mind, our entire ecosystem in mind. And the term, as I was preparing for this talk, I started kind of going down this internet research hole, as I often do at 2 in the morning. And I ended up on the Wikipedia page for workflows. And if you haven't read the Wikipedia page for workflows, and you are a bit of a nerd and are doing nothing at 2 in the morning, I highly recommend that you read this page. So the term workflows first appears in any sort of historical context in 1921 in a railway journal, because when we were talking about work, we were thinking about it from the perspective of how can we move trains forward. Later, through World War I and World War II, there's been a number of people who have studied what is the nature of work, how we think about job queues, how we think about factory lines, and how we can make things become more efficient. And on the Slack platform team, we think about this a lot as we create more interactive elements for you all to use in order to drive these workflows. And when we think about these interactive elements, when we think about really any element as a part of Slack or as a part of the Slack platform, really we think about them as Lego blocks. And we think about them as Lego blocks that you guys will all put together and introduce in very different ways and maybe create configurations that we hadn't even thought about yet. And so it's been really exciting watching some of the amazing creations over the last couple of days as people have been moving value, business value, from beginning to end through Slack via your software applications. But we wanted to take that a step further. Really, right now, with a lot of our interactive elements, they're more point-to-point, and we wanted to drive larger amounts of value from the beginning all the way to the end. And so in order to do that inside of our product team and our product and engineering team, we wanted to come together with a consistent language that we could use to describe the various parts of what a workflow is and the various investments that we're making as a part of the platform team to drive that forward. And so the language that we really came up with was initiation, action, and conclusion. Essentially, every workflow that you can think about, any driving forward of business value that you can think about, can be kind of summarized with these 3 words. So first, let's talk about initiation. Initiation is essentially the beginning of something. Something needs to happen. And initiation can be driven by a purchase order from a company. It could be driven by PagerDuty alerting to you that all of your servers are on fire. It could be your boss sending you a message saying, I really need this thing to get done. Right? All of those things are valid forms of initiation. They can be human, they can be system, they can be automated. The second is action. And when it comes to workflows, we're really talking about 1 to as many actions that may be required. Each one of these action phases may be run by an individual, so it may be you actually filling out a spreadsheet or taking inventory, or it may be run by a piece of software because action, moving something forward in either your build queue or your deployment stages. And then lastly is conclusion. And conclusion kind of is the thing that brings it full circle for us, right? It's like, let's make sure that the people who I work with and the other systems that I work with all know that this workflow has successfully been completed. We have moved some form of business value forward. We can take a record of that, and now we can move on, right? And so initiation, action, and conclusion has really become the 3 words that we focus on when we talk about our roadmap from the productivity side and when we talk about where we want to put our investment mix. This is how we think about it. And it's really important to me that you understand how we think about how we make that investment mix. Now, on the initiation and conclusion side, we have a lot of different things that we've built already. We already have the incoming webhooks for conclusions. We already have pretty rich message formatting. We've seen an amazing number of examples of that over the last couple of days. But it was really, and while we still have areas to improve in both of those places, it was really in the action space that we've all felt that there was we could really move the ball forward. And so today, that's really what we're going to be focusing on, is improvements to how users can take actions inside of Slack in order to move those workflows forward. So before we go into that, why did we think that was the right place to make an investment? Firstly, we all are familiar with slash commands. If you can't see this from the back, it says /helpdesk. But whenever users were implementing slash commands, we kind of had a couple of different interaction models that you could drive a user through. You could respond with a several set of message buttons and message menus, but there's a bit of a challenge here. You can't do any frame-form text, and each one of those interactions, because we update the entire message, is a click-wait kind of experience. And so it's really good to take individual action, but is often hard to take multiple actions very quickly if that's what you're attempting to do. You could do a more complicated slash command that enables free text input, but then we get really quickly into complicated syntax, something that's more comfortable for us as developers, but becomes really, really complicated if you're selling to someone, say, in finance or in legal or in human resources, and you want them to understand something that can become something like a command line sometimes. Alternatively, you could again use the slash command and DM a user through a bot. And that's also a good path that you can take. However, now you've removed the user from the context of the conversation, and you've pulled them into a separate silo where you're going to engage them in a back and forth conversational UI. And all of these things work. All of these things work, and we've seen amazing things that have been built by them. But we've also thought that there had to really be a better way to answer this slash command, right? A way for a user to input multiple amounts of data very, very quickly. And so today, I'm really happy to announce that we're bringing dialogues into play. And when I say dialogues, really, this is the way that we want to be able to respond to a slash command. We wanted a single field that comes up, is ephemeral to the channel, and allows multi-input right there. So with dialogues, essentially, what we're doing right here is as the user clicks that, or inputs that slash command, or clicks that button, What's happening is we are dynamically requesting a JSON object from you that defines the form itself. So on that click, you can check who is this user, do they have access to the thing that they're trying to do? Do they have full access, potentially limited access? What is the appropriate form or in dialogue that I should be showing to this user? So you can do that. You can have single or multi-input. So if this room was my channel, and I only wanted one person from this room to be able to answer this form, I can manage that on my side as an app developer. If I want every single person in this room to be able to respond exactly one time, I can also manage that on my side as a developer. If I want everyone to be able to give me as much input as they desire, or really just the right side of the room to give me as much input as they desire, but the left side not be allowed to at all, I can also do that. And the reason we created that single or multi-input kind of experience is because it's your content that they're engaging with. It's your application stack that they're engaging with via Slack. And so you, at the end of the day, and this is a really good follow-on to our security conversation that happened right before this, you understand the security models that you've implemented on your stack, so you know what this user should be able to do. It is initiated by all of our existing elements and will be by many of our future ones. So it works with slash commands, it works with message buttons, and it will work with many other things going forward. So they can be initiated through the elements you know and love already. And for V1, we're supporting text inputs, text areas, and dropdowns. We have a lot more interactive elements planned. If you were at Dev Day, I spoke to a lot of you about things that you wanted. We have a backlog of things, and we expect that we'll be continuing to develop on this for the next several months, kind of improving the experience as it goes out, and hopefully being really surprised by you guys and everything that you put together and responding to that demand. Now, as we begin to open up the surface area of Slack to our developer ecosystem, it really poses a challenging question to us. Because truly and deeply, it would make me really sad if what happened was all of a sudden people began to recreate the user interfaces that they've invested so much time in, recreating all of those user interfaces inside of Slack. I don't want you to rebuild your entire software application inside of Slack. That's the opposite of what I want. What I want is for you to connect the parts of your software application that matter the most. And really, that's different for every single person here. For ticketing systems, it's often you want it to be the source of record of information getting done, right? And so you want to be able to manage as much input as possible from as many different places as possible. So that makes sense. For other users, you might want to only engage with your highest value users because those are the users who are driving your recurring revenue, who are driving your new contract sales. And so you want them to be able to take action in Slack, and maybe other people need to come to your application. It's really important that you take a look at how you are driving engagement, what is the set of actions that are driving engagement for your applications, and then out of those set of actions, what is the subset of those actions that benefit from context and that benefit from being really quick. And as we went through this conversation internally, and this includes a lot of the product team, a lot of the engineering team, we really came to, we believe, and you've heard this before, that we believe that message is at the heart of communication, right? And through the Slack message, we believe it is both structured and unstructured enough to allow humans to speak to software, software to speak to software, and humans to speak to humans, which is a wonderful thing. But not all work benefits from contextual information, and we definitely know that not all work is quick. So when I was putting this presentation together, I didn't come into work. I went to a coffee shop and sat down because I knew that I needed 2.5 hours of quiet time to tell the story. And once I had that story, I could go back into my day, and I could meet with all of my people, and then it was just polish. Right? But I needed that quiet, focused time to figure out what my story was going to be. In the same vein, if you're writing code or if you're painting a painting, I imagine it's pretty difficult to be interrupted. And so because of that, we basically, our mantra internally is if it is quick and takes less than 2 minutes to do. And we thought a lot about that 2 minutes number. If it takes less than 2 minutes to do, and the team and the channel would benefit from this information being shared with them, that's a really useful interaction point to bring inside of Slack. If it is neither of those things, if you need to write a document, maybe that's better inside of a browser, because that's what browsers are for. right? And so kind of with that in mind, and with those 3 slides, I want to talk you through 2 of our amazing partners who've made 2 amazing, amazing use cases using dialogues to kind of show you what a real-world use case might look like. So the first, thank you so much to the Poly team. Poly is a polling solution for your Slack teams and channels. It can be used to do anything from extensive customer surveys to very, very simple team retrospectives at the end of a sprint. And what Poly has done is it's really important for them 2 things. They want users to be able to engage with their polls, and really they want you to be able to create really quick and lightweight polls so that you use it for more applications. So we've even talked about playing around with this internally as to measure every single one of our sprints, right? Like, was this a good sprint or was it a bad sprint? It only takes 1 or 2 questions. Why do I need to go to a browser to create that form and distribute that form? Why can't I do that just on Spot? And so this is a really great example of Poly showing poll creation inside of Slack. You will also be able to edit your polls, and you'll also be able to provide free text responses to existing polls. And that's all through the creation of dialogues. And doing this before would have been quite complicated. The next example that I have for you, I'm really excited about, and that's Rike. And for those of you not familiar, Rike is a highly flexible collaboration and project management solution for teams of just about any size. And as a collaboration and project management solution, one of the most important things for Rike is ensuring that the data inside of Rike is accurate, right? That all of the work that needs to get done is there, that all of the information required to move work forward is there. And so for Rike, it makes sense to make sure that they're opening up data input from as many places as possible, Slack being one of those places, because the conversation is already happening inside of Slack. And so this is a really great example of not only are they creating a ticket, they're assigning to someone, assigning a due date, and giving it a description. And so now I kind of want to paint a picture. Those were 2 examples of some use cases that we had. But over the course of the last 48 hours, we've talked about a lot of things. We had Sean on the stage yesterday talking about shared channels. We have a bunch of new things coming out beyond that. So I want to paint a picture for you around what each one of these Lego blocks, when combined together, what type of the opportunity is that we see here as a part of the product management team on the platform side. Imagine you have a client. That client is talking to your customer support individual, Sue, who is on the right there. Your client is not happy. Clients can often not be happy. But your client's not happy because some alignment is off or something or the other. They're in a shared channel together with one another, the customer support agent and the client, talking through these alignment issues, exchanging kind of screenshots and kind of making sure that they can see the issue and recreate the issue. Once Sue has confirmed that she can recreate the issue, she takes that message, the initial message that started the entire conversation, and sends that message over to her help desk solution. By doing so, that not only creates a new issue inside of the help desk solution, it can post back with a reference number and tracking number to the shared channel. Your client and both your customer service rep are on the same page regarding like what is that information, and they're seeing it as it's happening, right? So that's interesting. That's kind of cool. We're bringing in shared channels. But this help desk app goes ahead and posts to the developer channel. Margaret's sitting at the developer channel and sees that this ticket's come in from help desk from one of our clients, and this happens to be one of our important clients. So she goes ahead, looks at that ticket, can follow the archive link all the way back to the shared channel, can see the entire conversation between the customer support agent and the original client to increase the context around what is the problem that's actually happening. She knows this is an important client. She knows this is a really quick thing that we could probably fix relatively quickly. And so she goes ahead and clicks on that message and sends it to her task management solution. Her entire team now knows that there is a high priority issue that has come in from a client, was triaged by a customer service agent. They have access to where the original conversation happened with the client directly inside of their project management solution. They're not dealing with their help desk solution. They're not going into a different software that a different role manages. They are where they do work, but they are connected to different parts of the company and different parts of the customers simply because the software is helping them out by sharing out that context more broadly. As that ticket gets worked on, as it moves through in triage, in progress, into QA and is done, those tickets can get updated. And it is up to you, because you are the ecosystem. Those tickets can post back just to the developer channel. They could post back directly to the shared channel to make sure that the client emotionally feels that this ticket is being worked on and is being moved forward. Because we all know that really that's what our clients want. They want to know that you have their attention, you have their best interests in mind, and we're moving their work forward for them. And really, with all of these Legos, we think that there's a powerful connection that can happen here between multiple disconnected parts of companies that currently your arm doesn't talk to your leg. Why can't we bring those groups closer together and really share context? Because our developers want to do the best things when they have a client issue. They just might not have the right information. Our customer support agents want to have better conversations with our developers and with their clients, but they just don't know where to go. And so we really think that with the tools that you all are creating and with the ecosystem and some of the new Legos that we've introduced today, there's some really powerful, overarching, much larger things that are possible. And then we're really, really excited to see what all of you are going to do by this time next year. And so initiation, action, and conclusion, you're going to hear these terms coming out of the platform team whenever we talk about workflows and kind of whenever we make investments, kind of where our focus is and why we believe this is it. We have a bunch of different things coming out around initiation and conclusion as well. We're hoping that dialogues will be launched very close to the end of the month, this month. So keep an eye on the API site. But if you want to play with it today, I have a third partner who I would be absolutely remiss in mentioning. Please check out walkybot.co. Walkybot is an incredible prototyping tool that allows you to kind of like play around with the UX and the user experience of your app. And Walkybot has built out an entire dialogues experience, enabling for you to play around with some of the constraints that we've applied to dialogue while also understanding the functionality and the new things that you're able to do. And we're hopeful that by the end of the month, you've already started brainstorming some of the different connection points that you can create with your own software application, tested them with users using Walkybot's AI, and then are ready to bring it into the system the moment we go live at the end of the month. My name is Salman Suhail. Thank you very much, and I'm ready to take any questions you might have. So we have a mic up front here, and we have a runner, if anyone has questions here, with another mic over there. So up until yesterday, I was getting cold emails in my email inbox, which I do not check, with questions about this feature. So I'm assuming there's got to be some questions in this room. We got one. Thank you. No, we have a mic right there, or we have a mic coming to you.
In the absence of other questions.
Thank you.
Other non-listed types of input do you see? You mentioned text area, drop-downs. What else are you thinking about?
So we've got the obvious checkboxes and radio buttons that are going to come in, but we're really looking at a bunch of really fun stuff around potentially images, potentially calendar objects, potentially things like that. So we're really like looking at the basic kind of form elements that you would expect, but we're trying to really figure out like we intentionally left out what we left out, because we think the constraints are a good thing. And as we bring in more and more things, we want to make sure that the use case is wide enough. And so really, those are some of the use cases that we're thinking about right now, while also continuing to invest in the initiation conclusion. The most common feature request I've gotten so far is multi-page logic-driven dialogues. And so by that, what I mean is I can fill out the first page, I can press submit, that information comes to you, and based on what that information is, you can create the second page of this dialogue that could be option A, option B, option C, based on what I'd done. We've already prototyped a couple of options like that, and we can definitely see that as potentially something we would deliver, but we're kind of still like talking to people at the moment. All right, any other questions? That's fair.
So with that feature, do you think you guys would expose the API to allow people that are building bots to test the build-out of those dialogues? Something like Message Builder exists today, but in an API fashion.
So That's a really interesting question. So just in case people didn't hear, the question was, do we think we're going to build something similar to Message Builder to enable people to test out their dialogues? It's not something that we've talked about internally. Generally, the feedback we've gotten is the dialogue feature has been really easy to work with because we've used some consistent models that we've discovered on the web around JSON-driven input objects. I think that would be a really fantastic idea. I think Walkie takes it just like a step below what you're describing. Like you're actually looking for like a testing thing. And I definitely think, I'd love to talk to you more about that because I think we should.
With increasing the number of inputs here and having more forms, have you considered the option to just put a web view there and do some sort of callback so that we don't have to re-implement the whole browser and Slack again?
Absolutely, yeah. In fact, that conversation probably comes up every 4 to 5 weeks inside of Slack. And every new engineer who joins the platform team probably at some point asks that question. I've definitely asked that question myself. There's a very specific reason we're not just opening up a canvas that allows you to like drop in iframes and bring that inside of Slack. And we're probably never going to do that. Just kind of like make a statement. And the reason we're probably never going to do that goes back to those 3 slides where I talked about like what do we believe are the things that should belong in Slack versus the browser. I genuinely don't want everything that sits inside of the browser inside of Slack, right? Like we would completely lose any benefit of having that wall there, right? And having that wall is valuable because like do I truly want to create a new Google slide presentation inside of Slack? I don't think I actually do. Do I want to read a long-form legal document and then look at my boss's comments, my boss's boss's comments, and make sure I'm triaging those and like understanding what's happening? I'm not sure I want to do that inside of Slack either. And really, like, so when we talk about quick and contextual, and when I talk about those 2 minutes, like that constraint is very important to us because we believe that there often is a real reason to send the user to a browser, and it is not context switching because you want them to be enabled, you want to enable that user to do really deep work and take that deep work on, and doing that deeper work in a browser is probably better where like you can get into a distraction-free interface and you can go really deep there. So when I say we've opened up dialogues, there are some constraints there. So like if you wanted to create a dialogue input form that had 25 fields, you're not able to do it, right? Like we've programmatically limited the extent to which the inputs you can drive in there. And the reason for that is because we want to send you, if you're going to do, and Polly's even implemented this fantastically, if you want to create a simple poll, you do it inside of Slack. If you want to create a multi-page logic-driven, incredibly like complicated poll that you want to maybe send to your entire company, you should do that in the browser because it's the better tool for the job. Please.
Is there any customization we can do for the look and feel of the dialogue? And how does it render on the mobile?
Those are both really great questions. So customization is a little bit limited right now. We basically inherit some of the theme files that are brought in from the user. So it looks more like the interface that's there. The logo will be inherited from your app logo. The title is completely defined by you. All of those fields are completely defined by you. So right now, the UI look is limited to the title of the dialogue and the icon of the dialogue, but then all of the copy inside of that is overridable. So if you want the submit button to say something different, if you wanted the submit button to say something like create ticket instead of submit, you are allowed to override all of those default kind of like languages in there.
I just wanted to say thank you. Like, this is the most exciting thing I've seen at Slack Frontiers. I'm really, really excited by this new feature. But my question was, how much interactivity and user guidance can we give? So on that, when that dialogue appears, can we provide help text and can we provide interactive menus, and what customization can we do there?
So for this first launch that's coming out at the end of the month, we don't have support for just like plain text type of experiences, mostly because the design pattern that we saw evolving was when you initiate that form, you're like, here's some help desk, click this button to get started doing the form, right? So you can push that back into the message thread, and that's kind of where we believe was the right place. We're playing around right now with variations on how you can include plain text in that, because it was also like a very large request. The message menus you saw in here don't look the same as some of the message menus in our dynamic message menus, and we're bringing those into dialogues, and we've already started talking about that work, and it's work that will be a really fast follow on this. So it's definitely like we know that we want those same set of menus inside of those dynamically driven menus inside of dialogues as we have inside of the message pane, and we're working to make that happen. But yeah, thank you very much.
We're really excited. Thank you.
Howdy. This is not a dialogues question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Sure.
So I've seen a lot of product demos in the Expo Center that are, in one way or another, displaying a report. And the way that they do that is by crunching some data, producing an image, and then sending the image to Slack. Is there any thing in your roadmap to actually take the raw data and render that natively in Slack so that it could be like interactive, that sort of thing?
So there's nothing in our short-term roadmap that allows for the rendering of dynamic data. We have more of kind of a longer thread conversation going around how we can create more rich display, how we can display more rich information. And so in your case, it's data and graphs, but when we're looking at this problem, we're kind of looking at it from a more broad spectrum. The individual on my analytics team would love if we had that feature because he's been asking for it specifically. But it's something we're definitely looking at, and we consider that in the conclusion bucket. We kind of put how do we do message presentation, and when we look at our developer partners, what sort of data are they trying to pump in that is like not text? So it's definitely like we're deep in research spike right now territory on that, so it's not a short-term thing, but it's definitely something we're thinking about. Thank you.
Hi. This might have already been answered, but I was curious how the drop-downs are different than the one, because the ones in Slack right now have a lot of functionality, like
Correct.
the dynamic content, and you can type and autocomplete and a bunch of things. How big is the difference between the form drop-downs?
So the dialogue drop-downs you should consider to be much closer to a standard HTML drop-down than they are to our interactive drop-downs, right? So the first iteration of this would be a statically defined like option set that you provide as a part of your object when you send it to us. And then we want to align those things to bring them closer together, but we're basically starting with that static list for V1 in order to get it out the door faster, get it into your hands faster so that we can make those changes.
What about users and channels, which are like a special case of dynamic? In the current downs, you can do like, just give me the list of users?
Absolutely. So those aren't coming out in our V1 launch, but we believe those will be a fast follow.
I have a question. Can you hear me? Oh,
yes.
I have a question regarding capturing a user profile or other metadata as part of that dialogue, IDP information that we surface in Slack, session metrics, anything that can be captured automatically through that process.
So as a part of the form submission, we send you a couple of different objects along with the form itself. So we send you the user object, and we send you the channels object. So we kind of, it's like, who is this person and where is this happening? Like that is our like most basic set of information that by default will come with you on the dialogue response. And then from there, there's like other additional interrogations you can make against the API to pull additional information. But we're starting just from that right now. Any more questions? Oh, we got one more.
Hi. Actually, I think my question is not directly related to this conversation, but I'm going to ask it anyways. You tell me if it's not related.
Go for it.
So the data that comes from another app, like the ones you were showing us, they're not owned by Slack, right?
That is correct.
So let's say there is a channel, there have been data exchange using different apps, as we were saying in the demo, and then, I don't know, a year later, 6 months later, someone is looking at the history, going up the history. They want to fetch that data. One of the APIs has changed, and how would we manage the backwards compatibility? Like, if we can't fetch that data anymore, or Slack doesn't know how to represent that data, or the other side of the app doesn't know what that data means anymore. Say there was a field on the form, it doesn't even anymore exist. How is Slack or the app is going to handle that?
So let me sound that question back to you just to make sure I understand. It sounds like there are two players here. At one point, there's the app developer that is trying to drive some data, and some formatting may have changed, and so the form is no longer valid. So this is what I got to when I said the form is defined every time you click the button. So there's no advanced definition of the dialogue that's happening. So as a developer, the onus of this is on the developer, which is if your data model is changing or as if our API is changing, those are kind of like standard expectations, you're going to kind of update the form at that moment of click to make sure something valid is happening. We have a bunch of different fallbacks that we've created on our side to make sure that the user is always getting a positive experience. So if you sent us an incorrect form definition, we'll tell the user that something went wrong, they should try again. If you time out, we'll do the same thing. If there are any sort of server-side error, or sorry, client-side errors, we'll make sure to error those out before we even send you the data to try to triage it as much as possible. So from a data hygiene perspective over time, like the developer needs to be really involved in terms of like what that data looks like and how that data is interacting with this dialogue. And that would be either through your internal tools developers or the app developers that you're working with.
Representation of data has changed. Say 6 months later, on that ticket thing, there were timelines and assignee and what project it relates to. A year from now, the app doesn't care about the project name anymore. Instead, they're using, I don't know, project ID.
Correct. So you need, as you make those changes in your system of record, so let's say you're using a project management solution with your system of record. If you change the title field, and that system has built their own integration, they'll probably have built it in a flexible way to manage that. Yeah. Any last questions? All right, once again, my name is Salman Suhail. You can find me on Twitter, and I'll be hanging around here most of the day. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.